Welcome to Magpie Stories Writing Tips, a helping hand from one writer to another. If you enjoy the video, please consider liking, subscribing and commenting. I hope you have a pleasant time listening. Hello again and welcome to another Magpie Stories Writing Tips thing. I thought today I would mix up how I've done these before. I've still not quite settled on a format yet, so we'll see how this goes. So today I wanted to talk about showing not telling, how to create engaging stories. So what makes an enjoyable read, right? Seriously think about it. Think about a book, short story, a graphic novel, something like that that really drew you in. I mean, aside from the obvious things that spring to mind, things like plot, character, etc. I've got a guess, and I think it was probably that you were not told explicitly what was going on. You had to work things out yourself. You were shown a little bit, and then your mind helped to fill in the blanks. And forgive me here, but I'm going to link back to the thing I know best, which is horror. Think about when you're watching a film, okay, a movie for readers from across the pond, for listeners from across the pond. The element that makes this thing, whatever it is, scary is this idea of less is more. If you see the thing in the dark, in muted tones, with shapes and outlines, but not necessarily lit up for everything to see, it becomes infinitely more scary. Which is why in the best horror film, the thing, whatever this thing may be, is alluded to, hinted at, lurking in the dark corners, and also it has limited screen time. You have to fill in the blanks, and you need to think about that in terms of your writing. I want to refer back to the film It, not the recent one, but the one with Tim Curry. For those of you that have seen that, just remember how disappointing seeing the final iteration of It and how that made you feel. So let's boil this idea down a little. Think about this. Think about a book that you love. Alright, hands down, I get it. You love reading and you should love reading. Think about that book if it's been turned into a film. Did it change the way that you viewed that book? I mean, for me, I take the example of Lord of the Rings. Gandalf will always look to me now how he was played by Sir Ian McKellen, a glorious actor though he is. And it will always have an impact whenever I read the book. You kind of have lost that element that you created inside your own mind when you read it for the first time, hopefully without seeing the movie. So the benefit to being a little obscure in writing is that people fill in the gaps. Again, think about your favourite characters that you've read, not that you've seen in other mediums, but thinking specifically about reading and writing here. You have an impression, maybe, or a guide as to what they might look like, whether they're tall, short, large, thin, whatever. And you might have an idea about how they behave, how they might interact with the world. However, this is only a guiding principle. What makes really good characters interesting is not to be shown them as if you were a child reading a picture book, but actually that you create your own characters. Those are the people you fall in love with because you show, you don't tell. By leaving things to the reader, you get much more engagement. You give them the chance to create their own interpretation of a narrative. You give a challenge to the reading. We don't like things incredibly easy and laid out for them. We get no pleasure from that. We get a sense of satisfaction when we complete a challenge, when we succeed at something, when we create something. And actually, with you as a writer, you develop a much more compelling narrative. So people need to consider how we implement this. So showing rather than telling gives, like I've said, much more scope and allows a reader to consider what has happened and why to particular characters, or perhaps why they behave in a certain way. And I like to think about it like this. Think about writing in terms of narrative writing, in terms of writing a short story. You are not writing a news report. A news report gives information, it lacks ambiguity, and a story should be the antithesis of this. And I'll think of an example here. Try and avoid the following: he was hungry, she was scared, because what you're doing there is you're directly telling the audience what these characters are feeling, or this person is feeling, without letting them explore how these characters are feeling based on what they're doing. So instead of saying he was hungry, you might say he looked at the clock that was well past midday, his stomach rumbled incessantly. Or for she was scared, her breathing was labouring inside her body, shaking as icy fingers of sweat traced her spine. you see there, it's kind of obvious what they mean, but you add those extra little details in that show a reader. They don't specifically tell them. Telling is just that, it's a factual statement, whereas showing is something that leaves an emotional imprint or idea with the reader. I'm going to give you an extract from a book by George Orwell, 1984. If you've not read it, do. It's brilliant. And just think about the impression that is being left with a reader here. They're being shown, they're not being told. So I'll put my narrator voice onto this. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. So what we get here is we're given this world that's inhabited by this character Winston Smith, and we know that it's different to our own. There's that subtle nod to the fact the clocks are striking 13 when we know that they only go up to 12, and it draws a reader's attention to this oddity by having this little subtle clue that something's not quite right. We get this idea that the atmosphere is oppressive, that even the very wind is against him, that Winston cannot escape the vile wind, and we're left with an impression of both the character and the world he inhabits through being shown, not being told. So I think that kind of brings us to the end of this short video. So what I'm trying to say is ensure that you try and show a reader, you guide a reader, you sort of set them on the right direction and leave them to find the way to the narrative's conclusion by themselves. You don't need to literally hold their hand the entire way. You kind of shove them in the right direction and let them go. And I think that's about it from me. If this format works and you like it, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for listening to Magpie Stories. If you found these tips helpful, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. You'll hear from me again soon.